Gel in Agriculture, brought to you with the compliments of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, Fisheries and Water Resource Management and the Barbados Agricultural Society.
Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in Bim.
Welcome to Gel in Agriculture, where we're tagging along on the annual bus tour put on by the National Committee of ICOM Barbados, which is part of the International Council of Museums. Under the theme Museums for a Sustainable Society, the bus ride was called Homegrown Heritage. The trip started at the Barbados Museum and Historical Society, with stops at Eden Organic Farm in St. Lucie, the Ministry of Agriculture Soil Conservation Unit and the Permaculture Project, and Archer's Organic in St. Thomas, with a lunch stop at the Popular Bay Tavern in Martins Bay. The first stop was the Permaculture Unit at the Ministry of Agriculture, where the participants learned what permaculture means and how they can duplicate it at their homes.
Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in Bim.
Recently, Barbados celebrated its 49th anniversary of independence, and it seemed like a good time to look back at the history of sugarcane and agriculture in Barbados. Project manager at the Barbados Cane Industry Corporation, Carl Simpson, explains.
From its inception, agriculture has played an important role in the development of Barbados. You would have had production of tobacco, cotton, and then with the introduction of sugar, having whet the palates of the Europeans, sugar became a dominant crop for centuries in Barbados. It dominated every aspect of life in the country, not only the agricultural aspect, but its legislative, its cultural, its, as you know, slavery was a main feature of a lot of years of production of sugar. But sugar in itself has been the mainstay of the economy of Barbados for quite a while. The production of sugar was done for export mainly to Europe, and the whole production system of the country evolved, and the life evolved around that crop season event, where during the out of season all the lands would be prepared and making ready the factories, etc., for that big event during the crop season. It was during the crop season that most of the people would make most of their monies and look forward to the time when, you know, at least things which would have been hard during the outer crop would become a little bit more easier during the in-crop period, when money was flowing, economic activity was occurring.
During that period when the crop season was finished, was there some other form of agriculture that took place during that period?
Yes, you would have had large-scale production of sugarcane, but you would have also had food crops being grown in rotation with that sugarcane crop. So you would have your sweet potatoes, your yams, eddos, etc. Being an island nation and commerce not being what it is today, you would have had to depend on feeding your local population largely with a lot of the produce and whatnot from local sources. And so you had your production of both your plant-based foods, your potatoes, yams, eddos, etc., and also your animals, your cows, your sheep, pigs, etc. So you have those systems on the larger farms, and then with the evolution and the emancipation and whatnot, and many of the ex-slaves now having access to some lands, they also started to have their own peasant farming systems, which was very important in providing them with the means of sustaining themselves, providing food for their families, and then selling excess to neighbors, etc.
What's the future of the sugar industry in Barbados? We all know that we lose far more from it than we invest in producing it. Right. So what's the future? Where are we going?
Right. Well, sugar has had some ups and downs over the years. It has gone through quite a lot. But I would say that it is one of the crops that has helped us to develop to the point at which we are at. We see a future for um, fashion sugarcane industry, in which you are not only seeking to just grow sugar for export in a bulk form, we are going to be doing away with that, but seeking to produce our own sugar, which has international reputation and significance, where we would brand that sugar and sell it into niche markets locally, regionally, and internationally. That aspect of it has already started, and you'll see on the local supermarkets traditional Bajan sugar branded in the colors of Barbados, yellow and blue. That is part of that effort.
And there's a high-end sugar in the plantation,
plantation
in the small
reserves.
tins.
Yes, right. So we also use in the plantation reserve brand to also get into a higher level niche market, packaged gift sector and whatnot. All of this is an attempt to, as I said, refashion the industry, moving it away from bulk raw sugar and molasses as the main revenue source into a diverse range of products, sugar-based products, and also the production of electricity, which is going to be a main feature of what we are planning for a new sugarcane industry in Barbados.
And we're here at Archer's Organics, which is one of the stops on the tour. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, I visited the BADMC's processing plant. Stay with us.
Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in this. Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in this.
And as part of the ICOM tour, the International Council of Museums, of which Barbados is a member, we stopped here at Bay Tavern at Martins Bay for lunch. The BADMC has manufactured a line of flowers made of sweet potato and cassava. The latest in that lineup is breadfruit, and I got a chance to see the process.
The process starts when these lovely local Bajan breadfruits are received, and then we take them through the process of converting them into flour. The first step is the peeling, and as you can see, Delcina and Catherine are here peeling the breadfruits. They'll remove the hearts, and then they will cut the segments into smaller bits, which will then be ground.
This seems very labor intensive in terms of they having to hand peel and hand core the breadfruit. Is there any plan to look at another way of doing this that will make the process a little faster?
Not in the immediate future. It is true, it is labor intensive. It is, as you can see, a very manual process. But because of the variation in size, variation even in slight variations in varieties and the shape of the breadfruit, even though a breadfruit is basically a sphere, you have elongated spheres, you have big ones, small ones. So we found at this point in time it's better for us to use the manual labor where we can account for those differences. A machine would be pretty much one size fits all, and then it may only be able to do one particular type of crop. After they're peeled and cored, then we make sure that they're cleaned, and then we will then slice them up into smaller bits, which will then be dried. So these are the segments now which will be washed prior to slicing up. Sorry.
Is it just, are they just washed in water, or is there any particular solution that they're put in?
Just water, no chemicals. At this point too, there's an inspection, so that if there are any breadfruits which are overly soft, which are beyond the maturation stage that we're looking for, these will be eliminated at the stage. If there are any bad parts, that type of thing. So it's a very key inspection point. So every single breadfruit is handled, every single breadfruit is inspected, and that guarantees then our final flour quality. After they've been cleaned, then they will go through our slicing machine, in which case then that machine will then slice them up into smaller bits, which will then be more suitable for the dryer. If they're too big, then it will take too long to dry. You won't get an even drying. So the purpose of the slicing them up is to ensure that we get a good, even drying of the product. Then the product is placed on these trays, evenly spaced out as much as possible. And then that is then placed into the dryer. We have several dryers. This is our medium-sized dryer, and so they will go in there, and they will spend a total of anywhere between 12 to 15 hours. So it's a very slow, gentle drying. And when that process is finished, then we get the dried breadfruit chip, if you want to call it that, which is then ground to become the flour. The dried breadfruit chips will be milled, which is basically grinding them to a very fine powder, and that essentially is what makes it into flour.
Now I notice you've had to get very innovative here because it doesn't have a
Yeah.
chute that leads it right into the container.
Yeah.
So you put this plastic bag over the chute to guide it
Yes.
into the container.
Yes, without that, I'm afraid the entire place would be so cloudy we won't be able to see each other. But it does do a very useful job. So what Ms. Phillips is doing is, first of all, making sure that the bags are correctly coded. That's very important, so we have traceability. We can actually trace right back. Once we know the date that the product has been made, we will know which farmer that particular flour was made, whose breadfruit it was made from, literally. So it's essential for our traceability.
Do you also have on an expiry date on it? And what is the expiry date of this breadfruit flour? How long can I keep it?
Yes, we do put on an expiry date, and we put on an expiry date of 1 year. Of course, shelf life studies are continuing, and we've actually kept product longer than a year and found it to be quite good. So we're quite happy, depending on the storage conditions. But
And you're
a year
talking
is
a
fine.
cool, dry place, or maybe even
Yes.
in a refrigerator?
Yes, it doesn't have to be refrigerated. Once it's a cool, ambient, dry area, then it will keep well. That's why we actually package it in a Ziploc bag, so that when the housewife gets the product, she can use some,
And
re-zip
reseal it.
and it's
Okay.
fine. She's good to go. And as you can see, each bag is individually weighed, and that ensures that every single bag meets the 1 pound net weight requirement.
Now,
Yes.
in these economic times when everybody is looking to stretch a dollar, and I can get 4 pounds of regular flour for $6, $7,
Yes.
and this particular specialty flour is 1 pound for $10.
Yes.
How are you regularizing those two things so that Barbadians don't mind paying a little more for it, but it still fits into their budget?
I gotcha. But I guess the simple answer is with great difficulty, because it's not simple, it's not easy.
And it is labor intensive, so I understand the
It is
cost.
labor-intensive. What we are seeking to do is to hopefully get people to see from our perspective an eagle eye, to see the bigger picture. Yes, one can purchase wheat and flour, bring it into Barbados, expend foreign exchange and bring it into Barbados relatively cheaply. On the other hand, we can take that same foreign exchange, take some of it, invest it, could be said as an investment into the local economy, so that it helps the farmer, it helps the processors, it helps the retailers, it basically helps us as a country. And that's where we are when we're placing our emphasis, while still seeking to maintain the cost as low as we possibly can.
Okay, well, Carlton Batson, thank you so much. This has been so interesting and informative. I'm going to organize my own bag of breadfruit flour,
All right,
and
no
I'm going to go
problem.
home and try it.
Okay.
That's Carlton Batson here at the Food Promotion Unit of the BADMC, where they're processing not only breadfruit but cassava and sweet potato flour and trying their hand at new and innovative products. So next time you go grocery shopping, please make sure to buy at least one bag. Try it out. You can't use it on its own. You have to kind of mix it with some gluten flour, some wheat flour, but I promise you, it's great stuff.
Grow well, eat well, live well, right here in this.
And one of the stops on the tour was the Soil Conservation Unit in St. Andrew, where we got the opportunity to see a mango tree being grafted. Earlier, I talked to the project manager at the Barbados Cane Industry Corporation, Carl Simpson, about the history of agriculture. I also wanted to find out how the Second World War affected the island's ability to feed itself.
Being an island nation and in a war situation, the island was cut off basically because of the activities of the Germans, etc. And the whole question of how do you feed your population during those type of crisis situations led to the promulgation of specific legislation which mandated that 12.5% of the agricultural land, in specific the lands on the sugarcane production system, should be allocated to food production. This specific act was a lifesaver to Barbados in that during that period we were able to feed ourselves. Potatoes and yams and the production of those became the staple basis for our existence. I would remember hearing my grandmother talk about big grain rice, meaning potato became a substitute for rice, which was normally being imported. And so the production system under then was very much regulated to ensure that we were able to feed ourselves during this crisis period. That piece of legislation was only removed from the statute books, I think, in the 90s. It continued because it served a purpose in helping to ensure that the rotation system and the production of food was a key feature of the plantation system.
We saw what happened with the Dominica a few years ago with Hurricane Ivan. We saw what happened in Grenada. Is there a plan in place as to how we are going to manage to sustain ourselves in the event of some natural disaster?
Yes, part of the organization within the emergency management planning system, the Ministry of Agriculture has specific mandates and responsibilities to ensure that during the hurricane season, certain amount of foods is made available and stored and whatnot. So there's an arrangement with the importers, and also that's why we try to stimulate production during that period also, so that you're able to call on that just in case you have situations in which the importation is not available to you.
And this is where the tour ends, right here in St. Lucie at Eden Organic Farm. You've been watching episode 4 of Gel in Agriculture. And also check out everything that we've talked about in the program on their Facebook page, GEL in BIM. That's Gel in BIM. I'm Joel Ford. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Roll well, eat well, live well, right here in BIM.
Gel in Agriculture, brought to you with the compliments of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, Fisheries and Water Resource Management and the Barbados Agricultural Society.